Okay folks, in this lesson we are going to be taking a look at rendering Cinema 4D particles with Arnold for Cinema 4D. I have this simple particle emitter in my scene. From Simulate menu, Particles and Emitter, you can create one, and as you can see it simply emits particles if I play my timeline. And if I render my scene, you can see we get nothing in the render. We need to add an Arnold parameters tag to our emitter, so you can see if we do that, we get these particles being rendered as spheres in our scene. Right now the spheres are too huge, so let's select the tag and decrease its radius multiplier to 0.3. The first option is render points as. At the moment it is set to sphere, so we get our particles as spheres in the render. Just to see these particles a bit better, let's apply this blue standard surface shader to the emitter. There we go. Let's get back to the tag. We have points which render the particles in these disc shapes. We have quads, we have custom, and in this custom mode we can use our own geometry as particle shapes. Let me create a torus, reduce the ring radius to 50 and pipe radius to 12. Also let's add a tube and change the inner radius to 40 and the outer radius to 50. Select the tag again and let's drag this torus and tube to the custom shapes list, and as you can see we are using this torus and tube object as our particle shapes. And now using the shape mode we can tell Arnold how to distribute the defined shapes on the particles. We have 4 modes: sequential, random, blend and first, which are very self-explanatory. We also have child object. Let's use child object mode and let me just hide this torus and tube. Now let's enable the sphere object and set it as the child of the emitter. Select the emitter and make sure show objects is turned on. Also this sphere has a dynamic tag applied to, so if I run my timeline we would get this dynamic motion. Let's go to frame about 100. And if I run the IPR, because we set the render points as child object, we get the child objects of the emitter as the particle shapes. Right now it is just spheres, but we can add any other objects we want. Radius multiplier applies a global multiplier to the radius size of the particles. Let's set the radius multiplier to 1. We have minimum pixel width, so if you specify a number like 20 pixels here, particles in point mode should at least occupy 20 pixels of the screen size. So in this case, if any particles is smaller than 20 pixels, it would be enlarged to be at least 20 pixels. Now the main usage for this parameter is when you have small particles much smaller than a pixel. Now anti-aliasing those very small particles would be really hard for the engine, and in that case you can specify a number like 0.7, 0.8 or 1 to make sure it would be easier to anti-alias the image. Let me hide these particles for now. Also we have an Arnold mesh particles tag that can be very useful, and it basically creates particles on the vertices of the desired mesh. I have this abstract 3D object in the scene. Let me unhide it. If you right click on it and go to C4D28 tags, there is this Arnold mesh particles tag. Let me select this, and if you select the tag and reduce the multiplier to something like 0.02, you can see on each vertex we get a particle and the rest of the options are the same as before. Arnold also supports thinking particles and X particles, which is a third-party plugin. In the case of the thinking particle, you need to create an Arnold TP group object from the C4D28 plugin menu and define the thinking particle group you want to render. So that's about particles, and I will see you in the next lesson.